Okay, so let me ask you this. If I had food in my teeth, would you tell me? Are you that guy?
If I don't know you, absolutely not.
Me too, man.
Which is, yeah, it's terrible.
But
Do I have teeth? Do I have?
No.
Okay, I didn't even look in the mirror. I was like, oh crap, that was my biggest worry.
Okay, so we're talking today about kindness. You, Mike, are kind of like the quintessential nice guy, which I just think is so great. Has that ever bothered you? Do you like being the like Mr. Rogers of Grace Church, or do you sometimes?
The Mr. Rogers of Grace Church. Wow. I feel like there's such a negative connotation as a guy with that.
Negative?
Yes, I actually don't like that.
Really?
I don't know if I want to be known as the opposite of that, but I think as a guy, there's this like element of strength, and niceness and strength don't always go together. So I think that's
maybe.
In our minds,
Maybe
like the assumption, the stereotype of like tough guy, right?
Right.
So when you're like Mr. Rogers, it's not a compliment to a guy to call him Mr.
Guy,
Rogers. No.
Mr. Rogers is iconic, though.
He was, I mean, iconic, absolutely. But
it's okay.
I'm like, oh, he's just a nice guy. Like, don't rock the boat. He's, not willing to do hard things.
Too, though, but
so yeah,
So okay, you bring up a really good point, though. It's like, what exactly is kindness? Is it weakness? Is it just deference to other people? Is it politeness? Is it flattery? Is it confrontation sometimes? I think it's challenging sometimes to really define it. How would you define kindness?
Yeah, I mean, I think kindness is showing love to the person in front of you. It's showing care. It involves curiosity to know who they are.
Do you consider yourself a kind person?
I think so. I always tell people my family knows me the most. Mm-hmm. So there's always that, not the shadow self, but the real side too of, you push my buttons enough, you're going to see anger, which most people don't expect from someone like me. So I think with my personality, I also know how to be the chameleon and contextualize, be who I need to be for any person, which has also served me really well. I think to be able to say, how can I figure out what you need? And I often will become the person I need to be in that situation.
I love that you said that, the shadow self, because I feel like I can relate to that with even Clint, my husband, who's very playful. And people think like, oh, he's just Mr. Fun Loving. But every single person has that other side. I see the anger. I see the discouragement in the days that it's like, no, this is not a happy-go-lucky. So I like that you say that your wife and your family sees there's another side there too.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, and honestly, when I've recognized that, it helps me to give my kids a little bit more grace because I see them at their worst. But someone once told me, like, it's because they feel comfortable enough to be themselves in front of you. Mm-hmm. So I'm like, I want my kids to respect other people. I want them to be kind. But if I see the worst of them, it's probably because they're comfortable enough to be honest about their frustrations. And so I think recognizing that all of us are going to have moments of rage and frustration. In some ways, though, it's like I almost wish people could see more of that.
Do you?
So that I don't have the nice guy persona.
Do you feel like you've ever pendulum swung in your life of trying to strike that balance, like being assertive and then?
Oh, absolutely.
Like, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we took an assessment, some of us on staff, of just leadership assessment. And I mean, my scores were off the charts on certain qualities that kind of fall under this whole kindness, like high deferential to other people, not confronting necessarily. And I feel like I left that with a serious goal to be a healthier version of that. Mm-hmm. It's funny. I actually feel like Clint and I had a conversation once where I was like, I overcompensated in just a ministry area. And I realized that the pendulum had swung so much. I'm like, okay, I'm going to be an assertive person. I'm going to take charge. I'm going to just do what I think is best. And in that situation, I think like it didn't necessarily help. And I think because people always have seen me as the nice guy, they almost were like, okay, who is this person I'm talking to? This isn't the Mike Standish I'm used to. So I've had to like get comfortable in my own skin of like, what does my personality look like to be strong and confident and help people actually see a more healthy version of Mike Standish, but also have the confidence to say, this is who God made me.
Which I think part of what I want to like hash through in this whole podcast is just what is kindness actually? Like you've said, sort of, there's almost this idea that is it weakness? Is it you know, almost like cowardice, like deference to a degree that like you lose yourself. But obviously if it's who Jesus was, true kindness can't be opposed to strength. You know what I mean?
True.
Like how I'm curious to think like, what is it? How would you define kindness?
Yeah. I think it's a selflessness and a love for other people. And again, selflessness, I'm learning more and more as I just understand how God's wired me, does not have to be opposed to strength. It can be a confidence of, you know, I think Jesus had a confidence in his mission.
Yes.
He had a confidence in how he interacted with people, but it was, you are an important person. You are the person that demands my attention, my focus. I'm going to meet you where you're at, and I'm going to build a bridge. So I think for me, viewing kindness in that lens of how can I build a connection with this person that strengthens the relational bonds, where trust is built, where there is the ability to say hard things, because I do feel like the strength of my personality that I've seen over the years is like having the ability to say hard things and people trust me.
Yes.
Partly because I've built the relational equity in that. So that's where I'm trying to press in and see the benefits when I'm like, okay, I got to just be more tough and like be opposed to the persona of what the nice guy negative vibe is. I don't know.
It's funny to me that because I see so much of the positive vibe in the night. Like I was raised by a dad who's very much a kind person, like to his soul. And now that I'm thinking, yes, he would sometimes talk about that too. Like if he took a leadership thing, it'd probably be like he needs to be more assertive sometimes. But the funny thing is, to me, and this is just my opinion, but as I've met more and more, especially men in leadership over the years, I think there's a sense in which sometimes the most aggressive men are the most insecure and probably the weakest down deep. Like I saw in my dad and in you such a true humility that I think is confidence. Like if you're, do you know what I mean? Like if
Absolutely.
you really are confident in who you are, you can be humble. You don't have to be always my way or the highway. So I don't know. I think there's some nuance there, but it feels like such a basic thing, like just be kind. What do you think? Why do you think we struggle with it? Just maybe as people, but also as Christians. What are the hurdles to it?
Yeah, I think if I were to summarize, like we've lacked curiosity. We have failed to want to know more about others. And I think that's a huge hurdle. A book that was really helpful that I read was 12 Ways Your Phone is Changing You by Tony Reinke. And he unpacks a lot of different things, but he highlights the idea of anonymity and separation. And we see this in the digital world, you know, when people make comments they never would in person.
Yes.
And it's I'm anonymous. I'm hiding behind whatever it is. I'm separated from you. I'm not like you and I are talking right now. But the moment I'm behind this screen, I feel the freedom to just say what I want. And I joke, like, put me behind a car and I'm like a different person. So that is like when Mike Standish.
The road rage?
Like road rage, like no longer kind anymore.
Really? I would kind of like to see that.
It's actually hilarious for people who've never seen that side of me. But like I'm impatient. I'm like honking. I'm giving people the look.
Have you ever seen Beef?
No, I have not seen Beef.
On Netflix? Oh, man. It is all built around road rage. Yeah.
It's a real thing. I mean, I'm the guy that like, you're not going to pass me. And if you try to pass me and it's like
maybe
two
that's
lanes,
your one safe place, like you're saying, because
I can be
you're
who
behind,
I want. Yeah.
Yeah. That makes, you don't use the Grace sticker, do you, on your car?
I just had this conversation. There's no Grace bumper stickers on my car for that reason. And when I'm like in a 1 mile radius of Pembroke Drive here at the church, like there's no passing people. There's no honking at the light.
Oh, man. There was one time at a women's event that someone honked at me. I was pulling off of this campus and I went like this. And then I saw this camera right there and I was like, oh, shoot.
Yes.
It's just gone like.
I've had that.
Okay, so, and I think I relate to you too, though, about people pleasing, about sometimes I think I'm pushing down some of the deference to other people. The conflict's not worth it. And maybe there's a sense in which in your car, online, some of this like attitude can come out that maybe some of us have suppressed. But keep going. You're saying about the book.
But yeah. So I think with that, when we have separated ourselves, I think the what follows can be a greater ability to say things we never would. And I think we just lose some of that kindness.
Is there an antidote to that, you'd say? I mean, we're not going to get rid of our phones. Like, this is the culture we live in.
I mean, I think it's taking intentional steps to also get out of your echo chambers, right? So, like, again, I think the idea of when an opinion of mine is continued to be reinforced because of the people I follow, the algorithms on social media, then I am fed the only way of thinking about this idea. I remember in seminary I worked at the Ritz-Carlton, and honestly, that was probably one of the best opportunities that I had to just be with people who weren't following Jesus.
What did you do there?
So I valeted, the best job of my life.
I bet you got great tips. That's when kindness is such a win. You want a humble, sweet keep going.
Yeah, I mean, I drove a Bentley all day and just drove famous people around. It was wonderful. But I learned a lot from other people who just...
Any road rage in the Bentley?
Not in the Bentley. I did crash a few. I crashed a Porsche.
No.
Crash is an exaggerated. Definitely dinged it.
Oh.
Turned around a corner. Huge scrape. It was terrible.
I want to say, did you pretend it wasn't you? What do you do?
I totally wanted to. I mean, I would say don't. As someone who once valeted, I would never valet my car ever again.
Really? Because
valets. Valet guys cannot be trusted. We had this one, I mean, they completely ripped the side of this one van off. And they escorted someone around and were trying to get them in the car. Because once you leave,
you would think they'd be great drivers, though. I don't understand. That'd be like literally the job.
In garages, like how fast can I get this car going? So great job. But I learned a lot. Hey, coming full circle, I almost forgot where we were. I learned a lot from people and just started being curious about what they believed. And honestly, I worked with some people who did not embody that, who called themselves Christians. And it was so frustrating to me that they were the obnoxious ones. And I'm like, what you fail to do is like get behind learn more of what someone believes before you open your mouth and start talking about Jesus. Like, see where they're at first. Why do they believe what they believe? So I think that was a huge growth for me of learning the value of curiosity, to see where people are, to see why people believe what they do. But so I think you have to be intentional today to get out of that, to not just read the same articles, news articles, or wherever you're getting your media that can be biased, but to say, okay, I wonder what someone else would think about this. I think as a pastor, I have to be more intentional because like my job is in the church. It's around people where I don't naturally have interactions with a lot of people who may think differently than me.
Has there been anything else besides like books and things? I know you said part of this question of kindness, some is temperament. There may be some people who are more like naturally bent towards thinking of others or, being kind. Some is learned. I can hear you saying you've obviously read things that have shaped the way you think about things. Anything else, any experiences you've been on that have helped you kind of develop a sense of kindness? Yeah,
I mean, I think opportunities to travel. I've led some mission trips in previous
Where to?
roles. So I've gone to Malawi, Africa, and Thailand. Those were two places I took some high school students in my previous church. And Malawi especially, I learned the art of noticing people. Like they are very relational. For instance, like when you, in Malawian culture, when you walk into a room, so if I'm coming into the room for the first time in the morning, I acknowledge everyone. And that's not just a general hello. You go to every person and you greet them with a good morning. and you shake their hand. And it's like, if there's 10 people in the room, then you shake 10
like an introvert's
people.
Nightmare.
It absolutely is. But as an extrovert, I'm like, bring it on. This is amazing.
Clint would love that. Yeah. When we leave a party, I'm like, oh gosh, he's like, let me make the rounds.
Oh.
I would just slip right out. But
yeah, that's my wife's probably her biggest frustration at church. It's like, it's going to take Mike a good 20 minutes to get out of here because there's so many people.
But everybody does that there. That's just cultural.
It's expected. So I think it would be very offensive to walk into a room and not acknowledge someone, let alone just even saying a general hello. So I think for me, that's an important thing. I mean, even training my kids to say, hey, when an adult asks you how you are, look them in the eyes, answer their question, and then take one step farther and say, how are you? Like, just most people don't do that, let alone kids. So I think to me, this is a simple way for other people to be seen and valued. Like, I'm not going to walk into a room and just ignore the two people who are right there. I'm going to just stop for a second, say, hey, how's it going? Walk right by. But
it's interesting. This makes me think of, I moved to America when I was 15, actually. And the first thing I noticed, I distinctly remember noticing about American culture, was that Americans don't look each other in the eye if they don't know each other. And I was walking through a Walmart, and I guess I was just smiling and making eye contact with every person because that's very Filipino. Or I didn't even know it was a thing, but anyway. And I started seeing people kind of going, this one guy did something like, he made a face like, what are you looking at? You know, and I remember averting my eyes and then starting to pick up on the cultural cue. It's not even that I think it's rude, it's just not culturally done. And in the Philippines, everybody makes, they make eye contact and they kind of smile, whether or not they know each other. But it's just funny, little things like that. And sometimes I think, though, even as a parent, like, is that, if I'm pushing on this a little, is it kindness? Or is it somewhat cultural? And like, I think about your child, because I have some kids who are very, very, very shy. Yeah. And I to be honest, it kind of embarrassed me if they wouldn't, look someone in the eye and respond to them if they buried their head or whatever. But I had one daughter in particular who was painfully shy. And after a while, I just thought, maybe it's not a big deal. I don't want to teach her that she can't be who she is. But I do know you need the social skill of, like, you know what I mean? Looking people in the eye, et cetera. Sometimes I wonder, I guess I'm saying, do we mistake certain things for kindness? Like politeness?
Yeah, absolutely.
You know what I mean? Like, I don't know.
Well, I think you're onto something in some ways, Jeanne, because, I mean, I have an extrovert and an introverted child. And we've actually had to work through this because as an extrovert, I don't understand, my one child who's more introverted. And that's why when I train them to say, hey, here's what I expect, just acknowledge someone and then ask them how they're doing. But for that child, I'm like, you don't have to keep talking because you're introverted. I know that probably makes you a little uncomfortable. So I think that's for us how we've recognized this is who you are, and it's okay, bud. But I think you got to train. It's not because it's not normal. I think by helping them work through this, it's actually, I think, opening doors for them in the future of knowing how to actually interact with people. Yeah. But I certainly wouldn't say because they do this, they're kind people, right? And I think that's the misconception of kindness versus politeness. Yes.
Okay, so let me ask you this. If I had food in my teeth, would you tell me? Are you that guy?
If I don't know you, absolutely not.
Me too, man.
Which is, it's terrible. Do I have teeth? Do I have?
No.
Okay, I didn't even look in the mirror. I was like, oh crap, that was my biggest worry.
No, I read a book that was talking about the difference between politeness and kindness, and it used that example that a truly kind person would tell someone because they care more for the person. And I was like, I think I'm polite more than I am kind because I don't want to be uncomfortable making you uncomfortable. I'd rather, but even though later you're going to find out.
You're going to feel more uncomfortable.
Right. Yeah. So do you think it's ever kind to be confrontational?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And honestly, Jeanne, I wish I would have pressed into this earlier in my life. So I hate to admit that I'm 40 years old. And I tell people it's in the last couple of years that I truly felt confident in who God made me, pressed into the personality that God has given me, and then worked really hard to be a healthy version of that.
I love that.
Which means I have to work on certain things more than other people do. There's some people, confrontation all day long, what they're working on is kindness. Okay, be kind when you walk into a room. Or I'm like, hey, be confrontational. It's a loving thing to do to people.
So how have you learned to be confrontational and kind in it? Like, as you talk about pendulum swinging, where have you kind of landed?
I think the confidence to know this is important and I just need to help someone. Like for me, when I tell myself this is helping them, it actually helps me to do hard things.
That's very good.
So I'm actually telling myself this is kind, even though everything inside of me is like, oh my word, like how are they going to take this? Are they going to perceive this in a negative way? I always do the Oreo effect, like something really nice.
Oh yeah.
Then say the hard thing, then come back. And it's like, I'm trying to just be okay with not always even having to do that. Because if they trust me, they know I'm for them. I've got the relational equity. Yeah. I need just to say something hard. And recently I've had the ability to do that on a few occasions and truly feel like, you know what, if no one else is saying this, like that's not really loving. And hopefully you trust that I'm saying this to you because I am for you in a way that maybe other people aren't.
I think on the flip side of that, I've learned to really welcome that. Like recently someone actually wanted to sit down to say like, hey, can I kind of have a hard conversation with you? And where I in the past would be like, oh, like that, because I don't like conflict and I don't want to think I've hurt you. I have learned to welcome it because immediately I'm like, that means they're not saying it behind my back, which is a huge gift to me.
Yes.
It means that they trust that I can take it, and it means I have a chance to grow from it,
Absolutely.
And so to me, I've begun to say, this is like gold, but then this is like gold, so that means I need to also step out and do it with other people. It is actually loving, and it sounds like you and I might be more the type that are probably not going to err on the side of too harsh. Yes. We just have to be bold enough to say the truth.
Absolutely.
And I love that you said it comes down to knowing this is helping them, which is kind of like what you said about Jesus. He knew his mission. If the mission is right, then what I'm saying is going to be beneficial. Like if my motive for doing it is right, then it will be beneficial, you know? So,
absolutely.
Do you think anyone can develop kindness no matter where they're starting from?
Absolutely. I mean, that's one thing I love about grace. We talk about a next step, right? When you just say, I don't have to be this person, but what does it look like with the person God made me to be, to just be a kind person? Because, it is what Paul says is a defining trait of being spirit-filled is kindness. So it's not really can any person. I mean, if you are following Jesus, you actually have God in you, helping you to demonstrate kindness. I think it will look different. I think it's the beauty of the church. Like my version of kindness does not have to look like yours. So the more that we give grace to other people who need a little bit more effort in that, and they show grace in things that I need to do a little bit better on. But I absolutely believe people can take very intentional steps to be kind.
It's kind of like what we said at the beginning, in the same way that masculinity or toughness or strength doesn't only look one way. It looks, and that mentality I think is very damaging, masculine or feminine, like it only looks one way.
Yep.
Kindness does not only look one way. It can look a bunch of different ways. If maybe at the heart of it, I'm concerned about you. You know what I mean? I'm loving you, other people too. Like, would you say that's kind of the heart of kindness? It's just love for other people?
Yes.
Would you expound on that more, or do you think that's kind of, if we boiled it down?
Yeah, I mean, I think, I'm not sure how much more I would say to that, but if the person in front of me is someone I truly love and care for, then what am I willing to do or not do for the sake of that person? And I think that's why I often tie together curiosity and love. I mean, I'm continuing to understand more about my wife, who I've been married to for 18 years. She's not the same woman that I married, which means to love her well, I have to stay curious. I have to know her in new ways. I have to learn who she is and adapt my love towards her. And I think that's the huge opportunity we have with other people, is to actually figure out, what is it about this person and what do they need? I'm a huge proponent with my team, like telling them often, like, let's learn each other and figure out how each other ticks. Because when I know that you handle conflict this way, or that you operate in this way, I can meet you effectively in another particular way that will look different than another staff person. So for some people, it's like, that's way too much work. I am who I am, and you're going to deal with it. But for me, it's like, it really is, it's an opportunity that gets me excited to figure out how to contextualize my response to someone and experience. And honestly, I think throughout Scripture, we see Jesus doing that. We see Paul doing that so well. And I think that's why the gospel falls so effectively on people, because they knew their audience, and it was crafted in unique ways.
Stay curious, be kind. I love
Absolutely.
it.
Yep.
I love it.
Yep.
Okay, can we play a little game for fun?
Yes, I'm up for it.
Okay, ready? Now, not to step on any toes, but it is called Mike Standish or Mr. Rogers. Okay.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh.
So you're going to guess if this fact is about Mike Standish or about Mr. Rogers. Ready?
Okay.
Okay, here we go. He can juggle.
I can.
Yeah, so Mike Standish.
Mike Standish.
Okay. He was born colorblind.
Mr. Rogers.
His sweater and sneakers are housed at Rollins College.
Mr. Rogers.
Not
wow.
you. You didn't
no,
put that.
I used to have a cardigan sweater, but I no longer own it.
He has spent time with John Bon Jovi and Sheryl Crow.
That is me, and I'm now wondering how you have all this information on me.
What are my sources? Tell me about that. Okay, how did you know them? Was that from the Ritz?
That was Ritz-Carlton, yeah.
You drove their cars?
So at first I didn't. So there was this guy walking out from behind. I didn't even know who it was. I'm like rushing up to him to see if he needed help. And I look, I'm like, oh my word, that's Bon Jovi. Now I look like this like stalker valet who's just trying to like help him. And then I was driving Sheryl Crow in our Bentley. She had to go somewhere. And one of her songs, and I can't even remember what song it was that was playing on the radio, literally starts playing. And I try to make some offhanded comment of making it fun. I'm like, what a great song. Like, she completely just
ignored you.
Ignored me. I was like, well, I'm never going to say anything ever again when I'm driving someone famous. So it was fun.
That's so funny. Yeah, that's not surprised. He became an ordained minister, last one.
Me? Mike Standish?
Both, believe it or not.
I did not know that about Mr. Rogers.
I did not know that either, but apparently you are both ordained ministers.
Okay.
Thanks so much for being here, Mike. I really
Absolutely.
appreciate it.
Jeanne, it was a pleasure.
Hey, listen, I really appreciate you will grow and telling me if ever I have food in my teeth.
The same with me, yes. I love it.
Grace After Hours is a production of Grace Church in Orlando, Florida. Grace's mission is helping people take their next step toward Christ. Learn more at discovergrace.com. If you enjoyed this podcast, share it with someone you know and subscribe so you never miss an episode.